What's up? So continuing with part 3 of hip opening. And so definitely identifying whether the external rotation or the hip flexion is the limitation. For me, I have relatively open hamstrings compared to the things that are elongating, which are like glute medius, IT band, TFL, and the adductors. Particularly the adductors are limiting. So that's the part that we want to emphasize. We want to emphasize the weak point. So if the hamstrings were tight but external rotation is no problem, I would start with much more hip flexion, then go under, hand on the calf, and the other hand on the foot, and then worry about the external rotation once I'm way back there. For me, I do the opposite. So I emphasize the external rotation as much as possible, and then when I'm going behind, maybe I'll take advantage of the fact that my hamstrings are a bit more open. But before we get into that, soon I'll be posting a video on the 2 most important muscles to safely do like a leg behind the head or any kind of external rotation, like, you know, the half lotus is an external rotation. And that is the iliacus and the deep external hip rotators like gemellus muscles, piriformis. But that's not what this video is. So some of the techniques will be similar to that. Basically, you can have one leg out straight or the heel kind of in towards the perineum. Now with the foot, so this is the plantar of the foot. So it's plantar flexion, dorsiflexion. Okay, so we want to dorsiflex. When we're in the leg behind the head, we have a plantar flexion, but for this movement, we're going to have dorsiflexion. And then there is inversion and eversion. Inversion is the sole of the foot faces the midline, and eversion is it faces away. So we want eversion, so dorsiflexion and eversion. And that's how I rest the leg. The other leg can be really anywhere. I like to bring it in close. And this position helps isolate those deep external rotators that we need to wake up. Because we don't want to be relying on other rotators. There are other things that accomplish an external rotation of the femur. The deep external hip rotators they were evolved to be those primary muscles. So let's take advantage of that. And then from here, it's a forward stretch from here. It's very similar to part 1 stretch, but now we're on the ground and we have a particular emphasis of the foot, dorsiflexion, eversion. I'm pressing down through the heel and the knee. The knee is pressing down. In the isolated activation video that will come in the next week or 2, there's a rep motion and we have a hand here, we're feeling for the external rotators and so on. But for right now, this is just the stretch of it. So you would hold this for however long you deem worthy, always being cautious of, am I stretching the knee or am I stretching the hip and the leg muscles? And how are my legs clarifying my spine? The key is the tibial plateau. When we're doing leg behind the head, you want to bring your awareness to the tibial plateau and look up the femur bone from the tibial plateau to find that sensation of the external rotation in the hip. And then the other key would also be the tip of the coccyx, which is the budding point or the root of the root chakra. The root chakra flowers open onto the pelvic floor, but the root of it, the seed, is the tip of the coccyx. So you bring your awareness to the tibial plateau and the tip of the coccyx. You can do this on both legs, or what I'll show you now is both legs simultaneously, dorsiflexion, eversion. So this would be plantar flexion, dorsiflexion, eversion, and unfolding forward. Now, we want to have a long spine. We want to avoid a posterior pelvic tilt. That's when the plane of the sacrum is pointing behind our back. That's a posterior pelvic tilt versus an anterior pelvic tilt versus a neutral pelvis. And when we're doing this motion, we want to maintain a neutral pelvis as long as possible. At some point, I'm not going to be able to do it and I'll have to round, and then it's in posterior pelvic tilt. But I want to keep it neutral as long as possible. If I had a second block, just imagine I have my feet still on the block. One way to help with this is the teres minor isolation, which I have several videos on. So I'm pinching with the elbows, the wrists go away from each other, and as I fold forward, I'm protracting the scapula. This helps keep my spine long. I still have the dorsiflexion eversion of the feet, and this is just a great passive stretch. You can do this out of the sequence or as part of, let's say this was Supta Karmasana. So this could be your Supta Karmasana variation. If you don't have the block, or if you just have the one block for your feet, you can be reaching forward with the hands, or what I'll show you in the next video will be some variations of that, of actually the Supta Karmasana pose. And that's probably good for now. So, namaste. Subscribe to the channel.